Welcome to this explainer. Listen, if you're building, importing, or distributing software or connected hardware for the European market right now, the landscape is shifting dramatically. The European Union's Cyber Resilience Act, or CRA, is officially live. This is completely changing the rules for what they call products with digital elements, which is basically anything with a digital component connected to a device or a network. Navigating hundreds of pages of regulatory text can be a massive headache, so today we're going to enthusiastically unpack this whole thing together. We'll break down the scope, the horizontal standards, and the exact practical solutions you need to know.
Here is our compliance roadmap for today. 1. The CRA Compliance Challenge. 2. Finding your CRA scope. 3. Decoding horizontal standards. 4. Essential security controls. And finally, 5. Closing gaps with SAMI.
Starting with Section 1, the CRA Compliance Challenge, heavy fines and market recalls. Look, if you place a digital product on the EU market, compliance is now a legal necessity. Ignore it and you're facing severe risks, ranging from heavy fines to forced market recalls.
Moving to Section 2, finding your CRA scope, the codific tool. Because before you even think about diving into technical controls, you have to know exactly how these strict rules apply to you. So I really have to ask, do you actually know your exact regulatory risk tier or your specific supply chain liability under the CRA? Leaving your EU market access to guesswork is incredibly dangerous. Are you legally considered a manufacturer or an importer? Is your product a default PDE or is it classified as high risk? You absolutely need to know.
Okay, let's dive into this process. The Codific Scope Assessment tool takes roughly 3 minutes and walks you through 4 quick steps. First up is technical and territorial filtering. Basically, does your product process data, and is it available in the EU? Second is excluding highly regulated sectors. If you make medical devices or aviation products, for instance, you might already be covered by overlapping laws. Third is pinpointing your supply chain role. Your legal liabilities shift dramatically if you're a manufacturer versus, say, an open source steward. And fourth is product risk classification. This ranges from a default self-assessment all the way up to mandatory external EU certification for critical infrastructure. It's just a brilliantly simple way to map out your obligations.
Section 3, decoding horizontal standards, the ecosystem. Let's look at how standard-setting organizations like CEN and CENELEC have actually structured the rulebook you have to follow.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the standard makers didn't just write one giant confusing book. They broke it down into 3 interlocking parts. PT1 focuses on process, so your risk assessment and product life cycle. PT2 focuses on the technical side, which is your actual catalog of security controls built into the product. And PT3 focuses on vulnerability handling and updates after the product hits the market. You need the PT1 process to tell you exactly which PT2 technical controls to select so you can manage the PT3 vulnerabilities. They interlock safely and logically.
But let me anchor the legal severity of these rules with a really crucial insight from recent European Commission guidance. When selecting these technical controls based on your risk assessment, manufacturers absolutely cannot use cost or risk transfer as a justification to avoid implementing necessary security controls. You have to implement technical controls based on actual risk, not financial convenience.
Section 4, essential security controls, a practical summary of PT2. These are the specific horizontal standards dictating what must be built into the product itself.
The first major requirement is that products must be made available without known exploitable vulnerabilities. Now, notice the definition here. Exploitable means under practical conditions. The CRA doesn't ask you to be perfectly free from all vulnerabilities forever because that's literally impossible. Manufacturers aren't liable for unknown flaws that pop up the day after launch, provided they did their internal assessment, checked their software bill of materials for due diligence, and ensured nothing was publicly exploitable at launch.
Next, we have secure configuration. Products must minimize their attack surface right out of the box. They have to be secure by default. That means absolutely no default passwords. We do not want another Mirai botnet situation. It also requires secure startup processes, the ability to easily perform a factory reset, and the removal of unneeded software components and interfaces. Quite simply, less connectivity means a smaller attack surface.
I want you to remember this number, 5. Under the CRA, this represents the minimum number of years manufacturers must provide security updates for a product's expected lifetime. You can't just ship a product and forget about it anymore.
So the crucial point is how you deliver those updates.
According to the PT2 standards, updates must be seamless, but you still have to give users operational control. You need automatic update functionality, for sure, but also an easy opt-out mechanism. You need clear user notifications and the ability for the user to temporarily postpone an update. Imagine pushing an automatic update to an industrial facility at the worst possible time. That could cause real damage. The control must remain with the user.
Let's move to data minimization. This is a fascinating area because it often gets confused with GDPR. Let's contrast them directly. GDPR is focused broadly on protecting personal privacy and personally identifiable information. CRA data minimization, on the other hand, is focused strictly on minimizing the data necessary for the product's intended functionality. Under the CRA, you shouldn't collect telemetry, logging, or operational data that isn't absolutely required for the product to function securely. It's a completely different technical focus.
PT2 also tackles access control and integrity. How do you stop unauthorized access and data tampering? Well, you need appropriate authentication mechanisms and state-of-the-art cryptography. You must protect data at rest and in transit. But it's not just digital. Interestingly, defense in depth is key here, so even physical barriers can serve as legitimate security controls depending on your risk assessment. The standards also mention the importance of reporting unauthorized access and corruption. Implementing a secure boot sequence is also highly recommended to ensure the device hasn't been tampered with right from power on.
Finally, for the technical controls, we have availability and minimizing negative impact. If an incident happens, your product needs resilience and fail-safe recovery. Think of a smart thermostat. If its cloud backend goes down, the core function of heating your home should definitely still work. Furthermore, a compromised product must be designed so it does not degrade network availability, spread attacks to other connected systems, or fall easily to denial of service attacks. You simply must prevent attack propagation.
Bringing us to Section 5, Closing Gaps with SAMI, Actionable Compliance. How do you turn all of this massive catalog of PT2 rules into actual provable compliance?
This is exactly where Codifix SAMI tool comes in. It serves as the essential bridge. Once you've used the scope assessment tool, you use SAMI to actively evaluate your gaps against these specific PT2 technical controls. It helps you track your implementation, prove your risk assessments, and achieve that highly documented compliance required to generate your EU Declaration of Conformity and proudly affix that CE mark.
So, I leave you with this final provocative thought today. Are your digital products actually ready for the EU's strictest security rules, or are you leaving your market access entirely to guesswork? The standards are here, the deadlines are rapidly approaching, but with the right preparation and tools like Codifix Scope Assessment and SAMI, compliance is entirely within your reach. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Now it's time to take action.